Alright, so TF2 has been really interesting this week, in that everybody's been treating it as the fucking end of the world. Overwatch has threatened to kill all of our players, all of our production team, our dumbass Americans, our stupid Brits, and the only gamers that matter in the world, the Koreans. And so after this, we're pretty much not sure who's left standing. Nim says she's gonna go, you're gonna go, Dasher's gonna go, but there's pretty much one more good fight left in all of us. So the Australians are ready to prove the world that they're actually ready this time around and they're not going to get rolled. Froyotech has come out of the works to say, yeah, we're actually going to I-58, and this time we're going to bring in the last resort, Tyler himself. So the crowd favorite for Europe is also no longer nameless ever since Cadis left, so it's up to Stark to see if anything can happen. And so with everything on the line, just as the first stage of matchmaking has been pushed out for Team Fortress 2, what are your thoughts on I-58? Are the teams ready? Are we ready to make sure that I-58 is the best damn show we can put on?
When I was at I-55 and it came to the end of the event and it was amazing and it had just been fantastic, I said to all of the players and all of the people at production, do you guys realize this is the last time we will be playing this version of 6v6 at a world championship? This is the last time we'll see this pinnacle of mechanical skill on show. Because afterwards, we're going to be playing a completely different format. It's going to take people so long to adapt to it. But I was wrong. Valve took so long to get around to it that we have one last shot. We have one last shot at showing the world how good our version of 6v6 is. And it's incredible. And we're definitely going to make I-55 just an unreal experience. Because the teams, whilst they have kind of slipped from the past glory of some other teams, of like some previous rosters with these players, they all are around the same level, and they all have great storylines to be able to take this one. So if we take a look at Froyotech, Froyotech is Banny. Froyotech is Banny's chance to show the world that he can win no matter what. Banny can win no matter whether Clockwork's on his team. He doesn't need Blaze. He doesn't need Shade. Banny can win. So that is his storyline. He's partnered up with TLR, who he's never played with before. Always, they were just perennial enemies. So I think the Froyotech storyline is fantastic. You could really craft something great from that. And then RONIN. RONIN are going to be attending, and they are always second place. They have never had a shot at winning. They had one ESEA victory, which was gifted to them when Froyotech were having internal struggles. They have never proved themselves on a top stage, and they will be trying really hard as soon as they're at the event to get it, to finally get on that top stage, to make it to an iSeries final, and to be able to show the world what they are capable of. They're supposed to be this fantastic North American team, but they have not shown it yet, and they'll be desperate to show it, because after this, everything's up in the air. They'll have lost their opportunity. Australia as well have their last chance and their best chance at finally securing a spot above fourth, of getting onto the podium of 1, 2, 3 at the very least. And they have their best shot at taking it ever. They have a fantastically skilled roster. They lost their main caller in Brutalix recently, but they have just come straight back from that. And they're going to be the standout team for me. If Australia can't take it this year, they were never going to take it. And this is their best opportunity, and it's their last opportunity. And what's so fantastic about that is that it's not the Australian players that we've seen before. This is a whole new breed of Australian TF2. The ones that are even more hungry than the previous lot, who have all moved over to Overwatch. They're the last bastions of top Australian TF2 left, and this is their last shot. It's a fantastic storyline. And then in Europe, you have the people's favourites of Perilous, who now have Mike on their team. And they are players that have really risen up through the ranks. People know that Thalash has been around the scene for ages and has only just now recently had a chance to make it at the top level. He's been gradually improving for so long. Koss has been a player who's never played on the top team before. Celentes has just come out of the woodwork in like the past year. So has Ast. Ale as well. Nobody thought that he could perform at a top level before recent seasons, before DreamHack even. People weren't considering him a top demo. And then when you add Mike into the roster, this is a team that I think will have a lot of community backing. They'll be the real people's favorites from Europe to take it. And then, of course, you have nameLess without Cadus, but with Cadus in the backfield. And that for me is so interesting because Cadus is going to be behind them, guiding them, crafting them. He could usher in a whole new era of how we think about main calling and guiding teams. You know, you craft a 6-man lineup, but you can add in a 7th player now if the arena facilitates it. And they can be the one that guides you. You could bring Ips back from retirement, as Perilous were thinking of doing, and have him guide your team. You could bring Bite back out of the woodwork and get him to form a super team with you. No longer do you need to see these DM donkey teams running around. If you've got one player who can sit back and just craft how it all works, I think the coaching aspect is going to be so interesting for them. So in total, you have at I58 5 teams, along with all of the lower level teams like Crowns and people who are just desperate to prove themselves. You have these top 5 teams who are so evenly matched that I couldn't possibly call who's going to win, and I honestly couldn't rank who's going to go higher than who. It's a completely open field for the first time at any iSeries, and it's all under the context of this being the last one. Because even if it isn't the last one ever, even if iSeries goes longer than this, and I really hope it does, it's the last one that's ever going to use this rule set. It's the last one that's ever going to have this crop of players. It's the last one that's ever going to have this production team together. It's going to be the last great iSeries of old times. You know, maybe they'll go on in latter years and create something even better and it'll be fantastic, but it won't be the same. This is the end of an era, and may the next one be fantastic, but this is the pinnacle of what we can produce in production and what the teams on a competitive level can produce as well. It's also fantastic because we have so much North American production talent coming over as well. So the people from Canada, like yourself and Dashner, is going to be there as well to take in all of the knowledge that he's got from producing all these different events. We have Multiplay supporting us and helping us get it better and better, and they're now liaising with us and making sure that we have what we need in order to make this amazing production. The TF2 production has always been the thing that shoots furthest above what we're capable of sustaining as a scene, and I58 should just be going out in spectacular fashion.
Crunch.
That was my juicy red pepper.
A pepper?
Like a bell pepper.
Like a bell. I didn't want to believe it. They told me you had a bell pepper at like DreamHack, and then they were like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" It's interesting to see where everything's gonna lead from here. Actually, like it is the beginning, but for many of us, it's time to move forward.
Well, let me digest this pepper and then I'll digest your question. It's possibly the end for quite a number of people. Myself, Dashner, Gex. I'm not even sure whether he's going to be there, but possibly Gex. Nymphe as well, who's done an excellent job of administrating these events for countless years. And I'm sure a host of other people as well who might drop out silently or might make a splash with their exit. But the key thing to remember is that if TF2 does explode and does go somewhere, these people are probably not going to leave. It's like the players. You never quit TF2. And none of us are quitting TF2 because we dislike the game or that we are particularly burnt out and hate the whole experience. We just can't justify spending all the time we have without the game being in some sense big enough to give us something back. But as soon as the game gets to that position, if it ever does, you'll see all of the talent flocking back. You'll see players coming back. You'll see production people coming back. You'll see casters coming back, because they will all want to return to the game that they loved, their first love, their most deserving love, but one that was never able to love them back.
And truly, TF2 has been a labor of love up to this point for so many people. It was the one thing that people thought would keep our production crew and our players going along as time passed. Yet as time passed, we've seen players and production people come and go. We saw aight eventually starting up in Overwatch again. We saw Clockwork and Seagull, even though they said they'll try matchmaking, are signed onto contracts to play on Overwatch for the time being. And who knows when they'll be back. So it's interesting to see that, like, and I think I said this to Getawell yesterday, we're in an era right now, we're in a stage where, you know, everything has begun, but yes, everything does feel like it's going to end. So seeing as it's one last chance in terms of I-58, as so many of us believe, there's a lot of people who would be inclined to think that we're thinking negatively and say, no, it's really not the end. It's like there's going to be more, right? Not realizing just what sort of goes on beyond the scenes in terms of making that happen. How important is it to you that we make sure that this is the last big thing that we can give back to the TF2 community who has supported us, even though they don't fully understand it time and time again?
I said, when the people behind the scenes discuss this kind of stuff, it's always tempered with a little bit of burning out. Me and Dashna were discussing it, and we were like, can we really be bothered to do all of this again at I-58? It's so much effort, especially for Dashna. And he was getting a bit disheartened with the whole situation, and I said to him, look, if we're going to do it, you have to do it properly. You have to make this the best you possibly can. Otherwise, there's no point at all. And there certainly is a point to doing it. If there's merit to doing it whatsoever, which there is, then it should be the best we can possibly do it. And so that's the mantra we've got going into I-58, is that this should be the best production, the best experience for anybody coming into the game fresh out of matchmaking or fresh out of anywhere. They should look at this stream and go, good God, TF2 is a real esport. I can go up there and compete and get all of this attention and love, and all I can hope is that people receive it with the same amount of passion as we'll have creating it.
And to the naysayers who think that we can't do it, so for those who are spectating maybe from the outside, for those who are spectating from the outside, or for those who have already perhaps left because the burnout was too much for them. Maybe they felt like if they couldn't save the scene, nobody else could. If they couldn't do it, nobody else will be able to do the same thing that they tried to do exactly. For those who maybe just watched from the sidelines and thought that maybe it's too late for us with bigger team-based first-person shooters getting all the money, etc., etc. What do you have to say to these people who just don't believe or don't understand how it all works, who don't understand the passion?
If anybody truly thinks that the game is too old, or the production people don't have enough money, or everybody's losing passion, it won't be any good, the teams won't perform, this is ridiculous. We've seen this multiple times before. We have years of history of people piling effort into the scene for no good reason, except for the love of creating something, of crafting something physical out of their passion for the game. And so for people who are stood on the sidelines and don't think it's possible, or think that they tried their hardest, nobody else is going to be able to produce something good enough, there are years of history and evidence suggesting that we can do it. We can make it better and better and bigger and bigger. This isn't going to save TF2, but this is going to make everybody who plays and watches TF2 really happy and excited to watch. And at the end of the day, that's worth it.
Excellent. Anything else you think you'd like to add?
What else? What else is important about I-58?
Many worlds coming together, I guess, for one big LAN experience. One big LAN party.
I think the most important thing about I-58 is that it's not just the end, it's literally the beginning of a whole new era for the scene. But they're gonna need some different people to do it. I don't really want to say anything that can be turned into a fucking recruitment post, though. Let me think.
Why don't you want it turned into a recruitment post, actually? A lot of the thing that people who don't work in the scenes that we work in, what they'll tell me is that you might think it's all over and done, but it's all been said before. I've seen it all said before every single year. And then, somebody new will just come in and take over for you guys.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. So, everybody says at the end of every iSeries, this was the big one. This was it. This was the best that we can possibly make TF2, and there'll never be a big event like this ever again. I'm not stupid. I've been to every iSeries since I-46. I know that this is what people say, and I know this is just has been proven untrue again and again and again. But this time it's genuinely different. This time Valve are involved. This time we have matchmaking. This time the official mode for competitive is not what we're playing. Is not what teams have been practicing for year upon year. And even if the next iSeries is amazing, which I hope it is, I hope people step up and fill the shoes of those who've had to move on and produce something even more incredible, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to have that same feel that we've loved for 6, 7, 8 years of this game. And so this time it is different. This time it is the end of an era, but it's also the beginning of a new one. And people need to step up who have as much passion for TF2 as we do, or perhaps have more time, or perhaps have untapped resources, and they need to be the ones to carry the torch and lead us into a true competitive renaissance for TF2, because it's possible. All the pieces are there. They just need picking up and placing in the right direction, a little nudge in the right direction, and I firmly believe that TF2 is set in a great position from its base mechanical concepts to be a truly great team FPS.
With a lot of Valve listening, it's interesting to sort of see where all the possible directions that they could definitely take Team Fortress to, not to the same extent as maybe Dota or CSGO, but even with CSGO and Dota, there's some somewhat minimal involvement. Like, you've been in the Overwatch scene just about as long as I have been, even more so paying attention to how Blizzard interacts with the esports scene, to the point where it almost seems like they're very, very much involved compared to Valve in their esports scenes, to the point where it's almost considered meddling, whereas I don't know in the past what Valve has really done, but from what I've seen, they sort of offered the prize pots, they've offered some necessary means of balances, etc., and then they sort of let the people who are organizing it do their thing, save maybe for the international.
Yeah, Valve have a very different approach to the esports scene than other developers do. People like Riot and Blizzard love to get in there and really try and craft something and have a vision for it. Valve, they're very natural and organic. If they create a game that they believe has the ability to be played competitively and loved by lots of people, they'll just push it out there. They'll just give it the tools it needs, give it matchmaking, give it a few little bonuses to help people play, and they'll just leave it to organically grow and develop its own scene, its own tournament circuit, its own leagues. And then once it gets big enough, they'll step in and they'll just give it its nudge into the truly elite level, as we're currently seeing for Counter-Strike and Dota. We're not there. We could be there. I think we have the potential to get not up to CSGO and Dota's level, but certainly to be considered a real esport at some point. But it'll take time, and I don't disagree with the way that Valve do things. Certainly they've got better recently. They have a community outreach manager or whatever they call Jill, but he's certainly doing a good job. Their recent posts addressing the issues with casual after the matchmaking update just came out, very good communication. And it's difficult for them. They're in a position where they're trying to cater to a lot of different people who view TF2 as a lot of different games. And I have a lot of faith in them, actually, to help the game develop to its full potential. We might be annoyed if it doesn't reach its supposed potential, but that such is the way with things like this. They can't be forced.
They really can't be, and that was a big component as to why people argued why TF2 had needed developer support to become a, quote, real esport, unquote. I'm sure you're familiar with things like StarCraft Brood War, which survived and sustained itself as long as it did within Korea, which was probably a big part of why it was so successful. Without developer support for such a long time, until StarCraft 2 came out and Blizzard began slowly developing that until the inevitable present now, where so much money has been injected into it and so much company control that it arguably damaged the scene more than it helped it. So it's sort of like in that aspect, once I can figure out as I ramble along what my original point was, as I try to sound intelligent.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with developers really getting a grip on the scene and trying to control it. And I like the Valve approach in the end. I think it works. It takes time, but it works. TF2 is not even that old. If you consider how long it takes to really make a game into an esport, or make a concept into an esport, the CS concept took a long time, over a decade, before it was a real big esport in a lot of people's mainstream attention. The same with the MOBAs and the lane driving games. The same with a lot of other things that we now consider large esports. It'll take time. TF2 is not really that old. The concept of class-based shooters isn't really that old. So I don't think it's too late.
I think I can agree with that. Yeah, I don't think it's too late at all either. Consider when you mentioned CS:GO, I do remember that a lot of these CS:GO pros did come from CS 1.6, which arguably also didn't have the support it needed officially from Valve until Counter-Strike Global Offensive, when they started having things such as crates and stickers to help assist the CS:GO tournaments. It's interesting in that sense. But a lot of the argument I see is that TF2 was not designed to be a competitive game. One opinion that I disagree with strongly, but their reasoning for such is that TF2 was created before the era of standardized first-person shooter games, whereas nowadays, and I also mentioned this to Get Away yesterday, nowadays a lot of team-based or regular-based first-person shooters and games alike, you won't get an option like quick play ever in those games. You will not get one click of a button to go to a random match of your choice that isn't based on skill ranking. And now that TF2 has updated to match those standards, suddenly a lot of the base that doesn't understand that, and they've had years to be used to this sort of unoptimized way of playing the game, suddenly now they're the ones who feel isolated, alienated.
Yeah, that's true. TF2 was never designed as a competitive game. It was a happy accident.
Yes, but neither were a lot of games.
Exactly. There were lots of games. The best competitive games were never designed as competitive games. They were designed as games that respected the core mechanics of, if you want to have an impact in the game, your ability has to be proportional to that impact. They respected some basic competitive rules, but they were never designed with esports in mind. And the best games have all been happy accidents. TF2 was certainly a happy accident. Melee was a happy accident. CS, to some extent, was a happy accident if you look at how the original developers wanted the game to go. So I think that the idea that it wasn't designed as a competitive game doesn't hold merit. It doesn't hold any water when you really look at the argument. And The only issue with it not being designed as a competitive game is that Valve now have to dance around and try and appeal to the casual audience and bring them into competitive. And I think they are the best developers at working out how those two audiences can mesh together. And it may take a long time. It's a long-term plan, but I think Valve has a good idea of how to do that.
All right, yeah, I think that's good material. I'll skim through it. I'll see what works for the 17 seconds I need all of that good shit.
Yeah. You just want to crop it down to what little you
crop
can.
it. I really don't want to crop it down. As a matter of fact, if I had a choice, I'd take it and make it a thing.
Oh, you can afterwards. Just
I could take it.
Yeah, just afterwards, just release it as a interview or whatever if you want.